Welcome to the REI Masterminds Network, where host Jack Haas gathers amazing stories from leaders in real estate investing. In each episode, our guests will tell you what they're doing that works, what they've tried that failed, and best of all, you'll learn actionable steps to take your real estate investing to the next level. Now, here's Jack with another value-packed episode.
We have Dani and Flip Robison, and you can find more details with them and their group at Freedom Real Estate Group. I'll make sure to include that link in the show notes. And we're going to be talking about turnkey properties today. So this is going to be a kind of a treat because we haven't, frankly, talked about this topic really hardly at all. So really appreciate both of your times. And I mean, I understand that I think one or both of you have a veteran background as well. Is that correct?
No, we love the United States of America. That is it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, somewhere I thought I had read somewhere that one of you was a former, but I appreciate that too. I like your logo.
Yes, thank you. All of our companies, well, except for one, have some type of American theme, and we've just done that on purpose.
Sure. So, how long have you been doing this, especially the turnkey piece of it?
Yeah, we started in 2008. Mm-hmm. I'll let you take this over. You got this.
Yeah. So we were we worked on cruise ships. And in 2008, we were off the ship finally after about 10 years. And we wanted to go into real estate. We actually both got our realtor's license in Texas in 2008. So timing wasn't very good for us at that point. And after 8 months in doing one deal, we decided to jump into real estate investing. We studied we had a mentor. We learned a number of different strategies. And by, I think it was 2015, somebody had told us about this turnkey model. And when we first heard about it, it was like the I'm going to date myself here. It was like the old, you dipped your peanut butter in my chocolate commercial, right? Let's see who remembers that. But it was exactly what I wanted because in real estate investing, we weren't dealing with the same people over and over and over again. We didn't have clients anymore. It was we couldn't do repeat business. And with turnkey real estate, we could create that client base and do repeat business with people. And it was the proverbial light bulb above my head, and we were just like, that's what we need to do. And we fell in love with it right away. And it was a win for so many different people. It was I think it was 5 wins across the board for everybody. And so we went. Like I said, we jumped in both feet and
moved from Arizona to Ohio
to really do it.
Great cash flow state, and that's what rental properties is all about. Not focusing on appreciation, but focusing on that cash flow number. And so we met somebody, and we decided to move out and start a turnkey real estate business. And then 5 companies followed.
Well, why don't you? So you moved to Ohio. You jumped around quite a bit. So you're ending up in Ohio. Do you primarily do most, if not all, of your turnkey properties right there in your backyard?
Yes.
Yeah, we're from basically from Dayton down to Cincinnati, Southwest Ohio, and it's you can't get the cash flow. Well, you can. There's other cities around the states that have turnkey providers, but we lived in Texas and we lived in Arizona, and we definitely couldn't get that there. And so we had met somebody that was in Ohio and told us he was buying properties for $5,000, $10,000 a piece, and we're just like, what? So that's why we loaded everything up and we landed in just south of Dayton, Ohio.
And you can still buy them for $5,000 to $10,000 each, right?
Actually, yes. We bought a duplex last year for $500.
Oh, really? Is it somebody just wanted to get out of it? Is that just didn't want the hassle?
Please take this.
Yeah. And well, I mean, it needed quite extensive rehab too. So, our all in was much, much higher than that.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, you mentioned having 5 businesses total. Like, what are the other businesses and do they complement each other?
Yeah. So we like to talk about it in terms of vertical integration so that when people come and work with us, they've got many options, and we're all in one office. We're in this is my office now. This is a 15,000 square foot space, and all companies are under this roof. So we started off with a turnkey business. And then we built a renovation company so that all renovations would be in-house and we'd have more control over them. And then we brought property management in-house because we tested out 5 property managers and they all sucked, quite frankly. And so we were like, okay, we're losing clients not because of our product, but because property management was horrible. And we were supposed to be able to like jump in, right, and help anytime that there was a problem because they were our clients and we had this agreement with the property management companies, but it just never worked out. So before we intended, we brought in a property management company in-house. We've already merged with another one, have like about 500 doors under management now. And then because we built property management, it meant we had to have a broker. So might as well have a brokerage so that all of our retail flips, we could just list in-house and keep all of that commission coming in. And then the last one is we would usually buy properties from wholesalers, and we're a volume business. So we're buying a lot of properties. The wholesalers dried up and suddenly we're like, oh crap, we've got a lot of overhead and we need deals in order to keep everything going. So we created an acquisitions company. And then the last company is a multifamily syndication type company. It's also where I raise all of the money for the deals that we're doing. And that's Freedom Capital Investments.
Sure. So, it's kind of interesting because let's tackle the property management piece of this. Typically, what I have found is that, frankly, and this is going to be pretty blunt, a lot of property managers and investors, our interests aren't aligned, and it causes some stress there regarding those property management. So how have you mitigated that?
So there was a course, and I can't remember his name, but it was a landlording course, and it was very much about these things of creating raving fans. Your tenants are not tenants, they are residents. And so we always talk about the fact of how do we even have a KPI of an owner joy rating, and you get an email that says, we want to make you a raving fan. How are we doing? And it's a 1-question survey. And so we watched that. So the idea was simply providing value to the residents first and foremost, because if the residents are getting the value through upgrades, at leasing times, good, quick response times for maintenance work orders, quality rehabs that they get to live in, all those things, if they're happy, guess what? They stay. And if they're staying and they're paying, then the owners, as a result, don't have to have, vacancies and turns and evictions and all of the costs that add up when you're not keeping that resident happy. So we really started there. And I don't think enough property management companies start there. They want to please the owner, but they ultimately don't because they don't take care of that resident.
Yeah, well, and the owner understandably is trying to keep costs down because let's face it, when it comes to a single family home, if the air conditioner blows out, I mean, there goes any kind of cash flow in most parts of the country for half the year.
Yes, absolutely right. Yeah. And that's, whenever I'm on the phone with turnkey buyers, they're asking me lots of questions, right? From potentially talking to other turnkey companies. And you always get this, what didn't I ask? What don't I know to ask? Because you don't always know what questions to ask when you're talking about it. And one of the funny things is that I talk about things like that. I said, when we got to Ohio, they don't even have air conditioners on most of the houses here. It blew me away because we're from Texas, Arizona. So everybody has air conditioners. So that was one of the things. So when we actually first started, we weren't putting the air conditioners in the properties, but ultimately through client feedback, which is how you grow and how you create those raving fans. Ultimately, they decided, hey, let's just go ahead and start doing it. And so we created this guideline of how do we know if we should change out an AC? What does that look like? Because you don't want to buy a property that's supposed to be turnkey and then have expenses in your first few years. So then we created this, program and property standards that said, hey, when you look at the roof, make sure it has at least 10 years left of life. If it doesn't, we're going to replace it. When you're looking at HVAC or hot water heaters or things that are big ticket items, make sure they have at least 5 to 7 years life left. And so we have inspectors come in and make all of those kind of judgments, right? It's never perfect. And so there's been times where we've actually, something is broken in the first couple of years. And so to create that raving fan experience that we want across the board, we just jump in, not that we are obligated to, but we just jump in and help out in order to make the client happy. Because like Flip said, this is when you're in rental properties and doing the turnkey business, people buy 10, not 1, but you have to do a good job and keep your reputation and, create those raving fans. That's what I always like to say.
No, that's a good approach. Just again, head over to freedomrealestategroup.com for a lot of information and seeing some more information regarding what Dani and Flip can offer you. So you mentioned, those people who are getting into fixing or getting these turnkey properties for the first time, and they don't know what questions to ask. Why don't you give us a list of questions they probably should be asking to make sure that a turnkey provider is a good fit?
That's a great question. So I'm going to say property standards. One, what are you putting in your properties? Because we don't put carpet anymore. Again, client feedback. I don't want carpet because on turns, I'm going to have to, that's a expense to me. So we changed our property standards to LVP. So having the knowledge.
Can you clarify what is LVP?
Luxury vinyl plank.
Sure.
Flooring. So it's very, very durable. And that's not something you're going to have to, turn all the time. And it's even, I think they're click and lock. So even if, something does happen, you can replace a few of them. So it keeps the cost down. So it's really listening to that feedback and being on the phone. I started it, Flip started it. Mm-hmm. We were the ones on the phone talking to people, listening to those questions and learning what was good, what was bad, and being able to improve the business from there. So I would say that's hardcore number one, because that has to do with your costs and the durability of, what was used to actually rehab the unit. And then additionally, what are they doing that attracts the tenants, right? You want to be able to lease fast and lease at top market. So what exactly are they doing? We would put special touches in there like USB outlets, the kitchen, everybody wants a nice kitchen. So we'd have backsplash, a nice big high curve faucet so that, when the tenant has that big pot and they're trying to put it under that little faucet, they're not, wrenching it up and it's costing more money. So I think it's really that, because nobody asks those questions because they don't know to ask them. Mm-hmm. But those are two most important things in terms of cost of your rental property is the quality of the rehab and how quickly in top market value can you rent that property.
No, that's exactly something that we experimented with in my market is regarding to attract tenants. It's amazing how many people kind of default to the free month of rent or a TV, or there was some pretty crazy offers going on in my market at one point. And to be honest, the best response we would typically get would be using that money instead of a freebie. We would create an accent wall with shiplap, or upgrade the sink, or a variety of other things to make the unit pop versus, and then it stays with the unit, right? It's not something that leaves.
Yes, I love that you said that, because in that resident, 5-star type resident experience, one of the things that we're incorporating, we haven't done it yet, but it's getting in the works, is when they're renewing that lease, is what would, if you're going to renew your lease, choose from these upgrades. And they're property upgrades, right, that are going to increase the value or help the value of that property. So it could be like a ceiling fan or, things like that you just talked about. We haven't built out the list, but that's just something that now helps both the resident and the owner at the same time.
So is there anything in your market that is a little different that we would experience there versus some other places? Like, for example, I was talking to a turnkey provider at one point, and it was surprising to me that many of their properties didn't have basic kitchen gear, like an oven and refrigerator. Some of that stuff in that market, the residents brought with them. In my market, it has to be in there and included in the rental.
Yes. Yeah, in both Texas and Arizona, that was standard. That everything was in the kitchen. And so when we got to Ohio, we went walking a property, and the tenant was supposed to be moving in the next day or whatever. And I'm like, well, where's the kitchen? There's nothing in here.
Where's the refrigerator?
Where's the stove? Where's everything? I mean, because at least a stove. I mean, I understand some people travel with their refrigerators or whatever, but there wasn't a stove, and I'm just like, well, where's the stove? Well, it blew our mind. But yeah, it is something that it's not standard here in Ohio that the stove is part of the rental unit. Now, I believe we do.
Yeah. So what we have done, we've stuck with Ohio standards. So that's the two things I always say at the end of a call. If they ask me, what did I not ask? I'd say, this is what I learned when I got to Ohio. They don't typically have ACs, and they don't provide the appliances to the tenants when they move in. But we learn per Ohio what their standards are is anything 4 units and under, no appliances. The residents know that they're going to provide it themselves. But if you have, it's a commercial property, 5+, then the appliances are provided.
Okay. So yeah, that's one of those things that's really unique to certain areas, because more times than not, if something is going to break, it's an appliance or something that you'd have to deal with. And you've kind of removed that from the equation.
Yes, that was one of our discussions of should we, supply these because that could be a part of a quick lease. Look, you have the appliances here, and that's not normal here in Ohio. But then it came down to, well, is that an owner expense now? Every time it breaks, or every time, now we're maintaining it, as opposed to you provide your own and you fix your own because it's your property. So that was another discussion, and that's why we left it alone and said, okay, this is how Ohio does it. We're going to do it too.
Well, let's get into the meat of the rental properties then. Are they primarily single family homes? And then what type of returns are you trying to target for your investors?
I'm going to let you take that one.
Well, thank you very much. We actually, when we started, it was strictly single family houses, just one. We didn't even jump into duplexes until about a year into it. But then actually one of our first properties was a duplex, but we didn't focus on duplexes. But as we started building our clients, the client list, everyone kept saying, we want duplexes and more. And so that's when we try to focus on duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes, but the single family houses come in faster than the others do. But that's the meat. We do, I think, pretty much equal of all. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We are now getting into more of the commercial, the 8 units and the 10 units, but that's a few and far between. But it's mainly just it's a pretty even mix actually between single family.
It didn't used to be.
Yeah, no, it didn't at all.
Yeah.
But the investors they're clamoring, and whenever we do get a duplex, it's usually sold in minutes.
Yeah.
And they're
usually cash investors. So we've literally had people say, "Let me buy it now. You can still do the rehab and everything. I just want to buy it and own it because I don't want to, sit in line. I'll pay you cash. You don't have to worry about the financing part." That's how desperate people are for multifamily products, and there's just not as much of it out there. But we do our best to grab them when we can, and we're getting better at that.
Mm-hmm. So do you mind sharing, what is the target then regarding a cash on cash return in the Ohio market?
Well, I'm not, because I've been out of that part of the game for long enough now. When I was doing it about 2 years ago, the sale price of a property was around the $79,900 to $99,900, and the cap rates were for single family houses were around 8 to 9. Sometimes 10. The duplexes were around the 90 to 120, sometimes up to 150, but the duplexes were getting a much higher cap rate, around 11 to 12% cap rate. We've gotten some now, especially with this hot market, where the cap rates have dropped down to 7, maybe a high 6 on the single family houses. But people are still buying them we're not doing that for any other reason. We're selling the properties right where they're supposed to be sold because they're getting appraised by appraisers, and we're renting them at market rent. So it just happens to be when we first got here, the 1% of purchase price compared to rent was easy to get. It was sometimes 1.2%, but now it's not very easy to get anymore, especially in Cincinnati. We can't even get 1% purchase price to rent.
So are most of the houses that you're acquiring, are there's a typical layout? Is it 3-bedroom, a bath, 2-bedroom, a bath, and at that $80,000 price point? And at that point, what is the typical rent? Is it like $800 a month or?
Yeah, in Dayton, like a 3-bedroom, 1 bath is standard, and it really is standard. And that's usually around $89,900 to $94,900 area, and would easily rent for the $9,000 to $950. Okay. And then that's pretty much all throughout Dayton. And
so you're breaking that 1% rule. I mean.
Yeah. It's a hard rule for us. We don't even put it in the turnkey category because we can always retail flip it. But it has to hit that 1%, no matter what, if it's going to be a turnkey property. And if it doesn't hit it, then we just, sell it on the market. We still flip it and sell it on the market. So we have so many strategies. We know what the turnkey buyers want. And so we're meeting those goals. And for the cash on cash and the performers and everything, when they go to freedomrealestategroup.com, they're going to see turnkey properties, and they'll go to a different website called turnkey.ohio.com, and you'll see property availability, you'll see performance, all the numbers associated with it, so they can see cap rates, cash on cash returns, all that information is there, just so Like, because it's not always, as you grow a company, you hire people and you stop doing the job, and everything's not top of mind anymore. But it is out there.
Well, tell me a little bit about like the properties. Are there certain things you don't really touch? I mean, neighborhoods, certain age of construction. What does that look like?
Well, a certain age of construction, that's we touch it all, because one of the first properties we did was built in 1896. And so that really doesn't bother us. We prefer the 1950 and older, or younger, I should say. There are neighborhoods. This area is very unique because I-75 cuts right through Dayton. And on the east side of Dayton, there's only, there's a couple of places that I could point to on a map and say, we don't buy properties in this area. And it's solely because we can't get the returns. The value of the properties aren't where they need to be. And then on the west side of Dayton, it's literally street by street. There's one street that we would go down and we could buy the entire street and we would love it. And then, but one street over, we wouldn't even touch that street. And it's very, I can't even say it's pockets. It's literally street by street. So there are areas that we won't go to. There are areas that, we always tell people, if I can't walk down the street and feel safe at 7:00 at night, we won't buy in that street. And so there are areas like that we won't buy in. But a majority of the areas that we won't buy in this area, Southwest Ohio, is because of value. There's parts of Dayton, if you took that house and moved it over to the other side of Dayton, it would like triple in value. But just because of where it's at, it doesn't even make sense for us to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So would it be fair to say that you're targeting like C+, B neighborhoods?
Yes.
It's absolutely. And sometimes we get down to the C- and we might stretch it to C-, but that's, but yeah, that's absolutely where it would be.
I mean, part of this is investors, right? We do want to improve neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So, we don't want to go to the D class, but we are buying, like, I think we bought like 5 or 6 houses on a street, and our rehabber was just like, you need to buy the other 5. And we're just going to keep on going. Mm-hmm. And as we do, the neighborhoods get better. I mean, that's always a part of the dream of being an investor, I think, is helping the communities get better. So we don't want to stay completely clear. As long as we do feel safe and we feel good about the investment, then we're going to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So, it's kind of neat to see the level of synergy you have with all of your other companies. Have you found it challenging, especially now with COVID and the labor shortage and a few other things? How is that going regarding keeping on track regarding your rehabs and the like?
That's a great question. Culture is a big thing. We're in a lot of mastermind groups, and we're always asked to go on stage and talk about our team building, the fact that we've got, I think, over 50 team members now, and our culture. And the reason that we are able to do all of that is just because of who we are. It's always got to be a win-win. We want them to be happy. We've got flex time. We've got benefits. We've got, the stuff that we do with our team. People are just like, how many hours are you wasting? And when they're partying and then having, or doing this, or they're doing some personal development activity or whatever. But we've just created an environment that people don't want to go anywhere else, because there's no way they're going to get that same environment in a different workspace. I say all of that to say, when something like COVID happens, they wanted to come to work. They wanted to be here. We've actually had team members say, I'd rather be here than sitting at home, because, everybody kind of feels like friends a little bit. It's we call it the Freg family, because the, Freedom Real Estate Group is Freg. And so we just call it Freg family. And we've got like 20 VAs even, and they're always a part of activities. So it wasn't bad here in the office at all. In fact, most people still came to the office every single day. A lot of people didn't want to work from home. They wanted to be here. For construction, our main 2 crews, they probably can do alone up to 10 rehabs a month. They kept working. We did have, I think, 1 crew out of all of them that stopped working. But for the most part, everybody stuck around, and we're incredibly thankful for that, because we heard for other people, they had different experiences.
Right. So could you walk us through the process there then? Let's say somebody is interested in a turnkey property. They contact you, they make their first purchase. Like, walk us through briefly from the beginning to end, from when you acquire the property. Do they, for example, have to put up the money to do the rehab? Do you do that before you put it on the market? How does that look? And then to the point of getting in a resident?
That's a great question, because we just rolled out 3 programs to fit the different investors. You know how I keep on saying we're listening to people. What do you want from us so that we can serve you better? And people didn't want, we started out just doing one. Signature series rehab is what we call it. And as you just suggested, we bought the property, we rehabbed the property, we tenanted the property, we sold the property. That was the order and the alignment that everything happened. So everybody was getting a done for you experience. And that's what we thought everybody wanted. Silver platter, done for you. And we got some feedback. Hey, would you sell this sooner? Would you let me do the rehab? You know, that whole BRRRR model idea. And then even some of the properties that we buy are already tenanted. So why not sell that to a turnkey person? Then they can do the rehab when that tenant moves out. And so we've created 2 additional. Signature series is the full done for you. Then equity advantage is that BRRRR. So now we're filling up our pipeline so much. We used to say, stop acquisitions, don't buy anymore, because our rehab team needs to get through these and we don't want to be sitting on them. Now we've built up our pipeline, because if we buy it and it's vacant, we're going to say, hey, would you like to, are you interested in this property? It's vacant. It can be a BRRRR opportunity. Here's what we're going to sell it for. Here's what we're estimating for rehab. You'll be paying for the rehab. So you have those tax advantages of actually being the person handling the rehab, but our team's still doing it for you. You just have a little bit more control. You can say, I don't want the roof replaced if there's 7 years life. You might leave it there until you have to replace it. So they've got more decision-making power. So we, if it's vacant when we buy it, we offer it up equity advantage first. If it's occupied when we buy it, we offer it for instant cash flow, meaning you're going to buy this property that we found. We intend to do a full signature series on it. But if you want it now and these tenants, and you want to do your own rehab, then you can do that. So now it's a better conversation of when you get on the phone, it's getting to know the investor. What do they want? And we can help slot them in the process. We're going to buy them anyway and plan to take them all the way to the finish line. Somebody might just buy them in the middle of that process.
Sure. You know, this is something that has struck me here now as just talking to you, and you mentioned processes, and you got 50 members across your entire team. Was that right? Or is that just your construction?
No, across the entire team. So 6 companies, over 50. I think we're at like 52.
Well, that would have had to create a lot of processes and documentation. Like, what type of struggles did you experience there when you were scaling? I mean, there had to have been a lot of thought around just the business structure.
Yes, 100%. At first, it was me, Flip, Teen as our COO. We would create the processes and provide them to the people and train them. As we started growing, we were doing things faster than we thought we were going to have to. We didn't know we were going to build a renovation company. We knew we were going to build a property management, but we didn't know we were going to do it faster. So as you do that, grow too big, too fast, you end up failing, right? You crash and burn because you can't do it all. The trick that we came up with processes is, number one, you don't have to write them. Put on a video. If you're doing the task anyway, and you know how to do that task, turn on your screen share or whatever you're using to do it, and just talk through it. Just say, okay, so I'm adding a client into Podio, and this is how I do it. I add the first name first. Here's where I get this information. And so every team member, as they got taught something, they were responsible for creating that video. And we just started building that video database. So as their plate got too full and they had to hire somebody to help them, they gave those videos that they created to that team member so that they're not trying to train and do their job at the same time. So that was probably the gold nugget of figuring out processes.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent tip. And anytime you're talking about scaling, especially to the level that you've gotten, it's so important to have that figured out. Yes,
100%. We could have crashed without that idea, and I don't even know where we got it, but I'm glad we got it.
No, that's. You know, and the other question I have too is that it's obvious too that you know this business to a great detail as the business owner. You've spent some time working on the business as much as in the business. How was it regarding your mindset and letting some of this go and trusting your team to do their jobs?
That's a really great question, because it's hard, right? Because when you're doing
Flip is pointing to you, Dani, again.
Yeah. When you're doing it, you want somebody to do it just like you do, right? You're going to train them, and this is how you do it. And when they do it different, you're like, ugh, do I trust that? Do I care? Does it matter? There's a lot of questions. So it's much harder at the beginning than it was when we were so overwhelmed, growing so fast that we were like, this isn't going to get done unless we give it to somebody. And it doesn't matter anymore. And I've heard other people say, if somebody can do something at 70% or 80% of what you can do it, pass it off, because they're never going to do it like you. Just trust them to learn, help tweak, let them, run in your office for questions when they need it. So there just got to a point where we were forced to stop being perfectionists and say, I've got too much on my plate and we're here to serve these customers and we're not doing a good job because we're overwhelmed. So hire, pass it off, and we've literally had 2 people like in an office just so that we had that quick question answer. Hey, I'm doing this. How do I do it? And so we could, train a little bit better as we were figuring it all out.
No, that's something to be said there, because typically as entrepreneurs, and let's face it, as real estate investors, that's typically what we are. But weirdly enough, most people start in the mindset of it being a hobby and not treating it like a business.
True.
And we start to spread ourselves too thin. And we all know that what we focus on grows. And what kind of focus can you as a business owner provide if you're being pulled in a million different directions? You need that level of focus, even if it's finding that dedicated person.
Yes, 100%. I love that you just said what you focus on grows. I was on a mastermind call right before we jumped on this together. And he said the same thing as I'm talking about this Freedom Capital Investments that's just launched and everything that we're doing. And I said, we're raising money and we're, buying multifamily, and it's really just Flip and I plus 2 of our assistants. And I said, it's hard to focus on both raising money and buying the multifamily properties, and the transition of still, we hired a CEO and the 5 companies still need our help. And he said, what you focus on grows. My recommendation is you pull in other people to be able to help you, because if half of your time is spent with those 5 other companies and the CEO, then you only have 50% of your time left. So pick one and, do that. So I think that's a gold nugget too.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, I can't believe the time has just flown here. Again, I just want to point everybody to your website, freedomrealestategroup.com. I'll make sure to have that link in the show notes. I know you're pretty active on some of the social networks as well, so I'll make sure to include those links. I think I even found you on YouTube.
Yes, yep. We do a lot of videos.
So I'll make sure to have that link in the show notes as well. But I warned you, the question was coming. Is there a question you wished I would have asked you here today?
Yes. If you could start all over building these companies, where would you have started? And I love what we've done. I'm so proud of what we've done. But this new company that we have, Freedom Capital Investments, is focused on multifamily. And multifamily has so many more advantages than single family does. I was just always scared of it. I don't want to buy a 20-unit apartment complex, a 56-unit apartment complex. I just want to buy that single family house. But if I would have just studied a little bit, got educated about it, talked with people who were doing it, there's so many investors that go from single family, then they go duplex, triplex, and they're starting to realize the economies of scale and how that helps you by having multiple people in a building, including the rehab. I mean, our construction costs on the 56 unit that we bought were so much lower because the crew got to stay, be there. That was their only site. They weren't traveling back and forth. They got to use one unit, put all their materials, so they didn't charge us as much. There was so many benefits. So if I would have started all over, I probably would have started there instead of doing what we did. But I truly believe, because we're now vertically integrated, there's some advantages of actually going the way we did. So it's interesting to reflect on everything that we've learned at this stage of our lives.
Well, I can't thank you both enough for being on the show here today. Again, it was freedomrealestategroup.com. But I hope you'll consider coming back again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure.
Have you learned at least one actionable step to incorporate into your real estate investing? If so, please consider returning some of that value by leaving a positive review, subscribing to our YouTube channel, or joining our growing network on Facebook and Twitter. You can find links to all of our social media accounts in the show notes. See you next time.